Hey there, gang. I'd like to welcome you all today to a very special showcase of my Gift of Clown build. Now, I was a very slight disclaimer. I want to say this match is about a couple of months old. I was kind of planning to save it for a special occasion until a bunch of things kind of came up. You know, I was telling y'all in the past, within a couple of months, I had some things kind of come up IRL, and that kind of pushed off the production of this video. But what I really am excited to share with y'all is this wasn't your ordinary public match of using Gift of Clown. I didn't just go against any four-man ragtag team of survivors. No, I went up instead against a four-man team of competitive level survivors. They weren't all four members of the same team, but one of those members, Lusty, y'all, some people who do keep up with the DBD comp scene, part of one of the top NA teams, Team Cynic, happened to come across him, and I assumed to be some of his friends. You know, I checked the mutuals. Everyone there was all seemed to be friends with each other, so them being grouped up, I very well would imagine was not a coincidence. All four people being on the same friends list, right? Same lobby, all that jazz. And yeah, you know, speaking of the people, as a little preface we've gone against, these are all four very, very skilled survivors. Lusty in particular, you know, mentioning the name, I've played against him in probably 3 other matches in the past. Every single time, he has given me a very, very rough, you know, occasion and chase. Every time I'd come across him, he either just knew how to play the tiles perfectly, he knew how to chain from the tiles in a way where I just wasn't really experienced enough, you know? When it comes to survivors at this bracket, you really have to be on the ball. And that is part of why I even kind of altered my build in the way that I did. Normally, for example, I would run something like Jagged Compass in addition to probably a different add-on besides Cigar Box, but I was looking for something a little different here, and we'll get to that when we focus on the video. But yeah, these survivors all very, very good in chase, and not only are we playing, again, without that Jagged Compass utility, that setting us back, this really, really put a lot of impetus on the main core of our build, right? The Gift of Pain, Dying Light, Surge, all of this needed to be essentially what kept us in the game. Because even whatever we would gain from Blood Favor, right? Blood Favor is very likely going to get cleansed very early against a team like this. And since we don't have any Corrupt, we don't have any other form of instant regression beyond Surge, it's all up to these 3 perks, especially the slowdown from Gift of Pain and Dying Light, in order to stop us from just losing the match full out entirely. So, you know, again, I just wanted to kind of disclaimer that. Another real quick thing too, ahead of time, a lot of survivors, even of this skill level, they aren't used to going against Cigar Box. Not only do a lot of clown players in the comp scene, I guess you could say, they don't really use yellow bottles at all. This is a whole other topic for a whole other discussion, and I really don't want to kind of get into it. But because of that too, especially with Cigar Box being banned, a lot of them probably were caught off guard by this. So don't let that kind of misrepresent their skill or experience. You know, these are all, again, very, very skilled survivors. And let's go ahead and again talk about the build. So we have, for those who haven't heard me talk about this before, the main core of my build here, my Gift of Clown, is Gift of Pain, Dying Light, and Surge. The idea here is you want to find 3 non-obsessions. You're not really looking to tunnel with this build. You're not even really so much looking to camp even. Proxying for when the unhook happens, if you have good game sense to where you can catch that off right when it happens, right? So you can split the unhooker away from the unhooked and then force someone else to heal the person who got unhooked, right? And then they end up applying that debuff. That is usually the best form of macro pressure you can really do if you are going to be proxying, but you don't want to tunnel. You don't want to eat a decisive strike. You don't want to transfer the obsession when you have Dying Light, right? And you especially don't want to really make sure you're not getting the most out of the synergy between Dying Light and Gift of Pain. So the idea is that you just want to find 3 non-obsessions. You want to hook each one of them once to apply both Gift of Pain and Dying Light. And from there, the efficiency is meant to shift from the survivors into Clown's favor. The idea is that even if they're working on generators, right? See, the main thing is, unlike a lot of other perks that you might typically see people run, I don't know why I typed install, Dead Man Switch, right? Dead Man Switch, Pain Resonance, all of these perks here, they only really come into play after you successfully finish a chase. And this means that during the period of the chase, right, however long that chase may be, both the pre-running distance, the actual chase, the downing of the survivor, the picking up, and everything going to the hook, all of that, that is base efficiency for survivors when you don't factor in perks like Gift of Pain and Dying Light. They are doing everything as optimal as they otherwise would until you get that little burst instant regression, right? Or that gen blocking. And the difference here is that with Gift of Pain and Dying Light is that these perks are active during that chase phase. So if you have a relatively difficult chase, right, you're going to get a lot more value out of Dying Light and Gift of Pain stacked up from one hook on each non-obsession. You're going to do a whole lot better than you would if you ran something like Pain Resonance, Pop, or Dead Man Switch. Because when you consider that 2 survivors can finish a generator in 50 seconds, when you consider 1 survivor can finish one at base in 90 seconds, when you factor in toolboxes, all that jazz, having to commit to the pre-run, having to go through the 2 health states, having to pick up the survivor, carrying them to the hook, right? All of that, that is where the perks just start not mattering, right? Pop Goes the Weasel, Pain Resonance, right? If you're only getting the instant regression, if it's only coming into play when the generator is completed, well, what's it doing? You know, the whole idea here is that this stops that, and that's kind of where I've been seeing the most success with this. This combo in particular, especially with Surge. Surge is meant to stop you from kicking generators. If survivors are split, if you down survivors in a relative area where they're not able to, you know, say go to the corner of the map. Usually when survivors get caught out of position, you kind of have some control depending on the map to kind of choose where they're going to go to some degree. It's not really like fully right, but I digress. And the idea is that you just knock off not only 8%, which is going to be stronger due to the slowdown from Gift of Pain and Dying Light, but again, you're not kicking generators. And it also multiple floors. If you're on something like Gideon, if you're on, I was about to say Leary's, if you're on Midwich, right, maps with multiple floors, you're able to instantly regress them from afar. So again, with a killer like Clown who lacks in map mobility, this is also very strong with this. It's why I purposefully choose Surge over other instant regression perks. If I were to consider running a build like this on a different killer, or even in any way or fashion consider swapping Surge, it would probably be with Eruption. Eruption has the advantage of ensuring that instant regression is going to take place on a generator, given that even if a survivor goes to a corner of the map, right, because of the fact that it puts its effect on the generator itself, it removes some of that counterplay compared to Surge. But the only problem is you have to kick generators. This not only opens you up to Blast Mine, but it also just really, really hurts Clown when it comes to being that omnipresent, scary threat. Since a survivor working on a generator, you usually more often than not, you have to make the decision, do I kick the generator or do I commit to chasing the survivor, especially if they're possibly out of position for me to get an early health state and possibly make the second health state much easier than it would have been had I given them pre-run distance by choosing to kick the generator first, and or even worse, again, eating that Blast Mine. Blast Mine is one of the things perks I hate the most actually playing against Clown or playing as Clown, especially when I'm kicking generators, because it really, really hurts him given his lack of mobility. And that's, again, just one of the many, many reasons why I personally opt for Surge over Eruption. But, you know, when you are playing an M2 killer, right, someone who, like, let's say Artist, for example, who uses their birds, you can't really, right, like, get value from Surge when you're downing survivors with your M2. So, again, Eruption, I would definitely say better in that case. But now for the 4th perk, and this is where things start to get a little bit different, is normally I run Jagged Compass. And this is because Jagged Compass gives Clown a lot more flexibility when it comes to getting the value out of these 3 main perks, right? Because Dying Light is not the solo carry, but at the same time, neither is Gift of Pain. They're both very important pieces that require each other together in order to function properly. You can't have just Gift of Pain, you can't have just Dying Light, you need both. So this means, right, that every single hook consistently needs to be a Scourge hook in order for this to work. You start just getting regular hooks onto people early game and you're not applying your Gift of Pain and you're just getting your 3% Dying Light, you better have had a fast chase, because otherwise you are not going to be able to keep up in macro. Because especially with a build like this, when it lacks with Corrupt, you might be losing 2 generators before you start getting your ramp going. But if you are consistently applying that Gift of Pain, if you are also ramping up that Dying Light in the process, once you get your steam going, you've got it going on 3 different survivors. Even again, right, this is a showcase against 3 comp survivors. Or not 3, excuse me, against 4 comp survivors. I said 3 because I was thinking of the non-obsession, you know, yada yada. So against a team like this, right, it doesn't matter how good they are at looping and chase. The efficiency penalty from Gift of Pain and Dying Light, that is universal. That affects them too. The only real difference you will see when it comes to gen progression speeds is they're going to probably hit more great skill checks. Other than that, this hurts them just as much as it would anyone else. And one of the things I'm proud to really showcase is that it was the combinations of these perks that really kept me in the game. I genuinely do think that if I ran something like even with Corrupt, I think they would have probably stealthed out Corrupt. Probably not so much given that I had Cigar Box, but I digress. They would have definitely rotated to the non-corrupt generators. Since they were all in a 4-man, they would be able to easily communicate which generators aren't blocked. And then when you factor in perks like Pain Resonance, Dead Man Switch, Pop Goes the Weasel, they absolutely would have ensured that, again, by comparison to Gift of Pain and Dying Light, that I wouldn't have really been able to get the instant regression that I needed where I needed it. Either they would have been dying in corners and punished my lack of mobility, since I'd have to carry them to an inopportune hook. I then have to rotate to the generators that they're working on far from the position from it to actually get my kick with pop. And then, you know, in the process, I'm not going to be able to start a chase, right? Assuming I was using pop. But let's say I had Dead Man Switch. They would have just had someone at a different generator with less progress put the Dead Man Switch on that generator, so that way they can finish the generator with most progress in the event that I push them off of it, right? There's going to be no protection of that generator from them. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that these alternatives have significantly more counterplay compared to the Gift of Clown build. And since I had such strong early chases, not to really kind of give a spoiler, again, by comparison, that did so much more for me. Now, where does that leave Blood Favor, right? We talked a lot about Jagged Compass, why I run Jagged Compass, and why it's very, very important to make sure that every single hook is a Scourge hook. Choosing to take Blood Favor was very risky. This very much ensured that I needed to have a map where my Scourge hooks had good positioning. I didn't have them all on one side of the map. I didn't have them at an area of the map where survivors were unlikely to be, right? So for an example of what this would be a map with, a part of the map where there are weak tiles and or no generators, right? Why would a survivor be at a tile that is not easy for them to loop and or stall out the killer and chase, and there's no objective? So I want my Scourge hooks to be in a high traffic area. So I'm relying on that at base, given that I don't have Jagged Compass. But in return, what do I get? I get a much, much stronger first chase. I'm probably going to lose Blood Favor, sure, because Blood Favor, once survivors, right, know that you have it, and especially if one survivor sees it, they're going to be able to communicate it to their teammates. And, you know, with survivors like this that we're going against, they very likely have enough practice on this map that they know the totem spawns, right? So ultimately what this leads to is you do likely lose Blood Favor consistently against a team like this after your first chase, but that first chase is so much quicker. And if that first chase from Blood Favor, right, blocking those pallets so they have nothing to work with, results in me getting a very fast chase from Gift of Pain, well, then I start my ramp that much sooner. Because again, that's what this build is about. This build is about reaching that climax, reaching that critical mass from getting your Gift of Pain and Dying Light on 3 non-obsessions. Blood Favor exacerbates that if I get the good Scourge hook spawns. So I wouldn't, again, universally pick this. I do think that, you know, if you're looking for consistency with this build, you absolutely want Jagged Compass. But the main staple of the build is mostly just these 3 perks, Gift of Pain, Dying Light, and Surge. You can really run anything you almost want here. And, you know, that's even like Pain Res, right? Pain Res, DMS, Blood Favor, again, you know, I chose for the aggressiveness. And speaking of which, right, because this Blood Favor, getting that faster early chase, assuming it happens more consistently because of Blood Favor, it also played into my choice to run my add-ons here, right? Going into my add-ons, sorry, a little bit of weird transition here. The decision to take Cigar Box over Flask of Bleach or even Cheap Gin Bottle, right? Normally, I do run Flask of Bleach here. I consider this to be the strongest clown add-on combo for potency. But I opted for Cigar Box since I was hoping that I could get my chases started sooner because survivors wouldn't be able to immerse as well. It meant that I would be able to punish survivors who were caught out of position. And more importantly, it just meant that even if my potency was a little bit worse because I don't have Flask of Bleach, I'm able to play more consistently at the tiles. So unless I reach a position where, due to a lack of potency, I'm not getting these hits, right? Cigar Box is actually very, very good. And there were a couple of situations where I do feel like maybe Flask of Bleach would have helped. I do think that if I was on a different map, maybe a map like Suffocation Pit, probably would have wanted Flask of Bleach, right? But on Wretched Shop, in this particular case, Cigar Box was great. It synergizes well with Garish Makeup Kit, getting an extra 2 seconds of R reading. And, you know, one of the nice things, too, I'll even say on the side that I'm really kind of looking to showcase is how the nerf plan for Cigar Box, how much it would really, really hurt Clown. I'll go as far as to say that with 6 meters, y'all, like, you absolutely couldn't play against survivors like this. Like at some of the jungle gyms, I don't even think the R reading would have gone across the jungle gym, right? So I really don't even know what the initial proposed change would have accomplished, but I digress. And yeah, I'd say that's just about everything with the build. We'll talk about more of everything afterward, and yeah, hope y'all enjoy. Almost forgot to put on my game volume. Let's get it. Oh, an easy obsession. Well, that's at least somewhat of a consolation. We're gonna kick this door because Window's there. Oh wow, they're actually here. He's obsession. Not gonna bother. Perfect. Okay. That is obsession. Remember that we don't have Jagged. So it's important we get this hook here. They may get Blood Favor, but I'm fine with losing Blood Favor if I can get some early pressure off of it. This is obsession. I'm more concerned with pushing obsession than I am actually chasing him. Good run of bus. What am I doing? I'm gonna try something a bit unique with them. She's gonna look to go far right. Ooh, we get this, But I need to get this. I just hope they don't body block, that'd be so tragic. Who did we get? We got Nick. Didn't know. We want to get, in that case, Lara Croft. Losing Blood Favor is kind of fine. I expect this to be obsession. This is not obsession. I'll just kick this in Big Chase, believe it or not. I expect Lara to be going this way. I don't expect this to be Lusty, or excuse me, the Soma, but I could be wrong. I'm gonna actually rotate left. This is him. They're actually really, really deep. Good to know. This is who I want. -8%. No one else nearby. Get Gift of Pain. Gift of Pain is on everybody now, but the obsession. At this point, we're gonna go for this person. Perfect. Punish them for staying injured. Second hook onto her. Everybody's afflicted. Nick went to get this gen. Kick this pallet. Smart, 2-man on there. Oh, we kicked it already, didn't we? I guess we did. 1, 2, 3. I'm not really as concerned with them. We do have broken 3 gen. She's injured. I know we're injuring him early, but we're gonna look to play off of that. Remember, we have Gift of Pain. Think she's a dead hard gamer. I don't know if someone's here with a beamer or what. No, good. Take this. I actually want to go for an aggressive hook. They're looking to sit on gens while injured. Can we punish that? Oh, we punish this with Garsh, Makeup Kit, and this? I think we punish this. So everyone but Nia, I probably want to get Nia out of the game right now. That or get a hook onto Nick, who's over here, isn't he? There's no way. He doesn't have any tunnel. That's a kill into him, I think. Right? No, shit. He has. Fuck, we're just gonna hook this. Get Dying Light, rotate. Check back by me. Smart pre-drop. Shit, she's actually crawling under her pallet. I should have picked up the chance. Okay, this is a little bit stupid on my part, but it's fine. Get this hit. Fucking course, dude. I'm gonna lose this last gen. Only reason I'm not even. I don't think they can 2-man this, but we do need to hurry. I'm gonna get Gift of Pain on him in a break. Quick. 1, 2, 3. We have 2 people on Deathhook here. None of these things have progress. There's no way they have someone here with the save. Three on Death Hook? Yeah, there's one. They can't 2-man this even if they wanted to, and that minus 10% is gonna kill them. I'm not gonna bother kicking because it's not gonna be of prevalence. Yeah, get fucking rolled. They probably rotated a two-man one of these other two gens. Would be very, very, very smart. He chose to stay injured to avoid Gift of Pain. Also smart. They might not be able to finish this though due to how many stacks that they have, even with the two-man because of the Gift of Pain onto Nia. And there you go. No gens with progress, pretty much. They tried, but you can only really do so much. Thought I just saw someone right there. He's pre-running and he's got us not the best pre-run situation. We did kick this one pallet though, didn't we? Oh, we never kicked the pallet, okay. Alright, this guy's just better than me, dude. Hold on, he sees me with yellow, just fucking kick it, dude, fucking. I mean, she's got 8 stacks of Dying Light Gift of Pain. I've got like 3 minutes on this chase. Oh my fucking gosh, dude. Hold on. I'm gonna respect his ability to do shit with that. Good try. Really good team. God damn. Oh shit. You finished this gen, I didn't even know that. You should get Hatch here. I think, yeah, I believe in his ability. I really like his pathing. No pallet here. That hard? Good game, good game. What's up, Hank? Sorry, Hank, yeah, I was really fucking locked in. He probably already left just in case. Go chase his Lusty. Oh yeah, I already did it. He was hell, not gonna lie. That's cool, that's cool. Oh, they played really well. So make no mistake, this was a very close match that required my absolute focus. I had to play pretty much every chase perfectly. I couldn't make any mistake when it came to my decision to roam, right? I couldn't be going to bad locations on the map. I needed to make sure that I was taking those optimal pathing, right? I didn't want to let survivors just get free generator progress, despite the fact that as playing Clown, right, we are very limited in how we pressure survivors in the 1v4. So everything there, not only did I have to do very well, but for the most part I did, right? And again, going back to what I was saying, this match was still so very close. And you look at these survivors builds, they didn't show up with what they potentially could have. Nicolas Cage and Nia, for example, they could have both brought items. They could have brought med kits, toolboxes, especially with BMPs. Nia could have probably brought, you know, a 4th perk, maybe, right? But the thing is, when it comes to survivors like this, really, really skilled survivors, a lot of times, y'all, they're not queuing up into public games to flex. They're not here trying to 4-man out every single game. You know, when you see survivors that are of this skill caliber with builds like these, they're literally just here to chill. Maybe they're practicing similar perk combos for what they play when they play organized DBD, right? So they kind of just have more expertise in a more casual setting using the perks, right? And that's kind of why I think we see this here, right? Where, for example, Nia doesn't even have a 4th perk. I think she just brought hope for the memes. She was practicing, maybe potentially practicing her fundamentals with resilience, right? Hence why maybe was one of the reasons she also considered to stay injured. And deja vu to also coordinate the, you know, which generators to work on, right? Because that is a very important part of a 4-man, having someone with deja vu to help coordinate the rest of the team on who should be doing what, right? Especially when you are against a killer like Clown, who is limited in his mobility. So being as efficient as possible on breaking the 3 gens, getting them, you know, split as early as possible, that makes it hard for Clown to compensate. And to be quite honest, you know, going back to how I said I played well in Chase, had I played worse in Chase, I probably would have given them those windows to break the 3 gen earlier. I probably wouldn't have been able to get my ramp going on both Dying Light and Gift of Pain. And that was literally why we were able to hang in this game. We were able to beat them in the 1v4 because, like I was saying before the match, it doesn't matter how many hours you have in Dead by Daylight, your repair speed is universal. You repair generators at base at 90 seconds. Great skill checks are the only thing that will make that faster if you don't factor in, right, any other means through things like toolboxes, resiliences, things like that, you know, 2 survivors working on a gen, etc. The efficiency is standardized, and reducing that standardization during the course of the chase, rather than it being a perk that comes into the fact afterward, right? That, in tandem with our chases from the ramp, was how we were able to stay in a match against a team like this, especially since, again, later on, right, I did make a couple of key mistakes. Both when it came on choosing to slug, I got very greedy, and also I lost track of my hook timers. Now, these are both 2 details that I kind of want to focus on and a bit more of a focused analysis itself. We are going to do that with this match. We're going to go almost step by step from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to give you guys my insight. I know it's going to make this video a bit longer, but, you know, I feel like with, especially, again, when you're dealing with players like this, having that extra level of perspective, right, both when you're playing as the survivor and against it, I think it really, really helps, again, in these types of matches. So without further ado, give me just a moment here. Alrighty, so I went ahead and moved myself a little bit down here. I didn't want to block my perks so y'all can keep track of things like Dying Light and, you know, all my stacks and whatnot while we're going over the course of this match, especially when Blood Favor gets cleansed. I have the sound muted, so there's no like little, there's no occlusion going on or anything, and we can just kind of focus on the gameplay while I give you all my analysis. So first things first, we're kind of spawning in somewhat in the center and relatively close to the main building on Wretched shop, excuse me. And one of the first things you always want to figure out here when you're on this map is whether or not the window spawns on this side of the main building or if it spawns on the other side. If the window is on the other side of this building and not where it is right now, then we don't have to worry about kicking this door. But because the window is here, in order to play this main building better, you want to get this door out of the way as soon as possible. And given our close spawn to this building, right, relative to that, this makes it very efficient for us to go here. If we find a survivor after kicking the door, then we've got the start of our first chase very quickly. But either way, it's important to break that door. So we break that door, we've got our yellow, we're springboarding. Springboarding is when I use a yellow at one tile for the purpose of getting me started at a chase at a different one. In the event that there was a survivor around here when I had my yellow bottle active, my Invigoration, I would have been able to play off of that in a much better position than if I just didn't use a yellow. So we were looking to get a springboard, couldn't really get a chase with anybody that was a non-obsession. We do see Lusty. Lusty is the obsession, and one of the very worst survivors you can chase with a build like this is the obsession for your first chase. That's not going to build you up any stacks of Dying Light. At best, you're going to get Gift of Pain, assuming, again, without Jagged Compass. We're relying purely on our hook RNG when it comes to being able to get Gift of Pain off. So again, right, since we wouldn't be getting Dying Light, it makes it both very risky and not worth our time this early into the match. So when we see it's him, we break chase. We're looking for somebody else, literally anybody else at this point. The nice thing about seeing the obsession there is I do know that if I find someone else over here, it's not going to be the obsession. It can be literally anyone else. And again, anyone else matters. We find Nick. Nick is my first chase. I'm taking the momentum of my yellow from earlier. Do y'all notice this when I put this yellow? This is what I talk about when it comes to springboarding. Notice that I'm not actually using a yellow bottle at this tile, specifically at this tile to get the hit on a Nick. I use it from previously. I take the information and the extra duration from my Garish makeup kit, both to see what he's doing as well as to maintain that movement from that adjacent tile through springboarding. And thus with the yellow and the pink, I get my first health state on the outside of the wall. This pushes him. I think he was considering going to Shack, but he doesn't want to use Shack potentially too early. He's trying to see if he can get a different resource out of the way. Getting Shack out of the way this early would be very, very bad, especially if we were to hook him in a position where I can just literally like farm them over and over again. You know what I mean? Kind of like as we saw previously with my proxy hook rotations, which we'll get to in just a minute. So yeah, we get our first health state. He doesn't want to use Killer Shack. Instead, he wants to use a different resource. He goes for this pallet. This is a fairly weak pallet, but it's just the best he can do with using the very least. And we get our first down. We apply Surge on a multiple generators nearby. This buys us just a teeny bit of time while we go through this little meandering process of cleaning our weapon, picking up Nick, carrying him to a hook, right? Starting our ramp with our first stack of Dying Light and Gift of Pain. Another thing to keep in mind too, by the way, is especially when we got that hit, part of what forced him to take this chase to begin with, right? Remember, is that we had Blood Favor. So he is looking to see if he can play the outside of this wall, but especially once we get this tag, right? Not only could he not even play the jungle gym in here, but he also could even have probably played Shack if he wanted. That's another thing I didn't even remark on, is due to Blood Favor, he probably couldn't have even played Killer Shack, since the duration of Blood Favor meant that we could have just upscaled our momentum like we normally were, using yellows and pinks. We still had at least 2 bottles left, and that's all we would have needed, right? He couldn't play the check spots at Killer Shack. He could have probably looked to rotate from the Killer Shack and stalled a little bit as we got our bottles going to the jungle gym, back behind it on the left side, right, near the exit gate. But the problem with that decision, I'll kind of make that a little bit clear, right? Let's kind of rewind a bit to see what I'm talking about. See, he could have held forward to the Killer Shack and then the jungle gym on the behind it near the corner. But, you know, the problem with doing that is we could have still springboarded our yellow, right? If I saw him going in that direction with my 2 remaining bottles, I would have just thrown a yellow relative to the Killer Shack. If he plays Killer Shack, we have the pink to down him at the Shack before he makes it to the pallet, especially with being blocked. If he wants to keep going to that jungle gym, we probably intercept him and cut him off before he gets anywhere. So, again, that's my point, right? He doesn't really have anything to work with. He has to take this chase in the direction he does, right? And he uses probably the weakest resource that he has, which, again, very early, right? If you're going to go down, it's better to go down using a weak resource than if you're going to go down and use a strong resource. So we apply our Surge. We buy ourselves just that teeny bit of time for when we get our recovery. I'm blind as a bat, apparently. Can't find where survivors go down. Takes me a little bit of time to find them and pick them up. And yeah, we're looking to get our Scourge Hook. Now, as y'all see by our spawns, one of the reasons I don't go by the hill, I expect there's a possibility that there are 2 survivors on this generator. Right? If 2 survivors are on this generator, when I find Nick and I carry him, right, then that means that there's a very good chance, due to the distance, that they body block. I don't get this hook. I lose my Gift of Pain. I lose my Dying Light. I don't have Corrupt Intervention. I don't have any form of instant regression beyond the Surge, which already got applied, right? I could be losing this generator. I could be losing another generator. I have no hooks, right? It would be extremely bad if I were to lose this hook, especially if it was because I choose to be so greedy as to hook as aggressively against a team like this. Because as y'all are going to see, right, which is one of the main issues that almost cost me this game, being greedy against survivors of this caliber is one of the biggest ways to lose your matches. So we carry him. I don't want to go to those Scourge Hooks. This one I feel like is not going to have any survivors there. It doesn't have any generators, right? There's no generators in this specific quadrant of the map, maybe to the right, but they would have probably gone toward the Shack side of the map if I were coming in this direction rather than going toward this dead zone with the weak filler pallet, right? So we get this carry here on Bepsi, Nicolas Cage. We carry him to this hook. And from here, I get my first stack of Dying Light. I get my first application on the non-obsessions of Gift of Pain. We have started our ramp, and I'm looking to continue it. So we see the obsession. I'm still not very concerned about the obsession. The only time you really want to worry about hooking the obsession with Gift of Pain, especially early into the match, is if it is super fucking free. Like, if we're talking express deluxe freedom, like delivery right to your doorstep free, then yeah, hook the obsession, get your Gift of Pain, ignore them early and for the rest of the match. But it's Lusty. You know, not only does he have pre-run distance, it's still fairly early in. I know for a fact, because I've played against him before, he's not going to give me an early chase. So I absolutely am not going to be looking to chase him. Instead, like I said, I'm looking to more push and rotate him away from the generator, since that means he's not getting any generator progress. Right? So even though I can't really do much to him directly, both in chase and when it comes to like actually slowing down his repair speed due to him being the obsession and being ignoring my dying light, right? The very best I can do is just push him to where he's not doing anything to begin with, because he has to preserve his safety, because taking an injury in a health state opens me up to snowballing, especially when you factor in, right, the perks that I have. And as we're going to see in just a few minutes, right, when it comes to staying injured, right, as for the survivors that had Gift of Pain, how much more this opens up Snowball. So we push him off. We don't see anybody besides Lusty. We're looking for our next chase. I know survivors are going to be on this side of the map because we previously saw Surge pop, right? I know for a fact that I'm going to see possibly one, maybe even two survivors. And I know that this generator has to have a decent level of progress. So as I'm crossing, I see Nia. Nia gets a very fair amount of pre-run distance. She probably could have played safer. In my opinion, the best way to play this against Clown, especially when you have the comms and you see he's like rotating like this, you leave right now. You leave right now. If she leaves right now and she goes to back jungle gym, I'm just kind of SOL. Best decision I have is to go back to hook immediately. I'm not going to be able to commit to that chase. But because of the fact that she's only this far away from me, I can springboard into the bus, right? That's why I can commit to playing this. That's why I choose not to kick the generator, because even though this generator is a fair amount of progress, choosing to kick the generator can enable her to leave this tile. Throwing the yellow bottle inward like this, not only is she not going to get the yellow bottle, but it forces her to have to play inward here, because otherwise she gets tagged into dead zone. And that is what I figure is going to be most reasonable and practical, right? Again, we still have blood favor. So getting the tag here also does make it easier for us to get the second hit into the down, into my second hook of Dying Light / Gift of Pain. We get our first tag, we apply blood favor, and admittedly, gang, I didn't actually realize blood favor was in play here. I was not only kind of ready for her to leave the tile, but I didn't anticipate the fact that she could have looked to play a pallet, realize, oh wait, the pallet's not here, and then catch her out of position. Had I played a bit more aggressively at this jungle gym, I probably would have downed her here. She probably wouldn't have had a chance to get Shack, but that's okay. She played this very well. She tile chained very well. And this is one of the things I talk about. If I wasn't on point for this, if I had presumed she was still at this tile, right? I didn't need Cigar Box to figure that out, as y'all see, right? We're not getting our R reading till after the fact. Knowing when survivors chain tiles at this level is going to be one of the biggest ways that you actually have stronger chases. So we get my yellow on the tile chain. I am springboarding again, but I don't have any bottles. This springboard is purposefully just to make sure that she doesn't go anywhere beyond where she's at. I'm locking her at Killer Shack, or at the very least, convincing her that she probably needs to play this, because otherwise she has to rotate back to a bus where we already got a health state. She has to go back to a jungle gym at a corner of map where it's going to be hard for her to chain the tile, right? So reasonably, this is probably the best she's got, is seeing if she can play Shack. And admittedly, she did a pretty damn good job. But here's the thing, gang. I've got 7,000 hours on Clown, or excuse me, 7,000 matches. I know millions of different ways to play this tile, and that's why I was like, I'm going to try something different. So instead, what I do is I over-aggress and push her from the check. Because look at this, right? Do you see where she is? I know she's playing this check spot. I know that's what she's doing. So if she's playing this check spot, and I push her like this, I know that she's predictably going to then overextend to either a different check spot or take advantage of the displacement, especially with my yellow being out of position. She knows I'm not under the effect of my yellow, right? And this is where I have her walk into my own trap. I have her basically stumble, right? I call this, I've been kind of working on a term for this as of more recently. I call it slipping off the slope. And that's why I say she's going to go very far right. She slips off and overextends. If she had played more patiently, right inside this shack, she would have possession of the pallet as I rotate like this instead of vaulting outward, and then she'd be able to drop the pallet, and I wouldn't be able to get the tag. She would force the pallet break. She would get a free chain to an adjacent tile. She could even have Lusty or a teammate come in for the body block, and then at that point, I really would be hurting in macro, right? But the mistake that she made, again, she chooses to play a check, which doesn't work. Playing check spots at Killer Shack seldom ever works at Clown when he's using both of his bottles properly. And she just overextends to where there is now nothing she can do. You might be thinking, why doesn't she vault back inward? She could probably try. It's going to be a medium vault. I have my yellow, which means I move faster and lunge farther. The hitbox due to the medium vault very likely means she does get tagged if she tries, especially when you consider reaction time. right? I do hide my red stain typically when I do rotate around from this window, as we see here, right? In the same way, that's why she also left a little bit later than usual, but she vaults. I actually didn't know this time. I think it was because I knew she'd be an animation lock and she wouldn't actually have that opportunity. We are playing at normal speed here. And again, she can't play this tile, right? We have her walk right into our trap. We get the down onto Nia. And this is my second hook. It is my second application of Gift of Pain. It is my second stack of Dying Light, which means that we have half of the team doing generators 22% slower, excuse me, gang. And that means that the only two survivors that are doing generators at a relatively decent speed are going to be the Lara Croft and Lusty. So half of the team, though, very, very slow on generator repair speeds. I get my kick for some passive regression. This also encourages someone to come here more ASAP. I'm now looking for my next chase, and that's really what I care about is my next chase. We lose Blood Favor, which again, not really a consequence to me. I don't care about losing Blood Favor simply because we've gotten our value out of it. We've gotten 2 hooks on 2 different non-obsessions. So I've got my 2 stacks of Dying Light. I've got Gift of Pain. I'm almost at my full ramp, right? Losing Blood Favor, it did its job. We're breaking some pallets just to make things a bit more dangerous around the middle of the map. This is a lot more pallets than I normally break, and that's because I'm not going easy on these gamers, gang. I know these are good survivors. And since there's no real incentive here, why do I not just consider chasing him in a dead zone? I think he's ready to play the tile. Do y'all see that stutter? He actually was expecting me to possibly not kick this pallet. He was ready for a rotation and me doing something at this tile. Since we have Nia on the hook, the back side of the map, and we got this pallet so easily, and I know that he has Gift of Pain, right? Then I'm confident just breaking this pallet and ignoring him. I didn't break his Gift of Pain. He's still got 2 stacks of Dying Light. He's inefficient if he goes back and work on that generator. But you know what is efficient for me? Choosing to do this. We push the Obsession off the generator, right? So now Lusty's not working on generators. And also we come back to hook. We interrupt the heal, which means they don't get fully healed. We instantly regress all of that healing progress. None of that sticks because of the hemorrhage. And it means that someone else now needs to heal Nia if she wants to get healed. And if not, I now can focus the person who unhooked them. I don't have to worry about anti-tunnel. I can now get what I was talking about when it comes to my 3 stacks of Dying Light, as well as my 3rd survivor with Gift of Pain. This means we now have 3 survivors with Gift of Pain, all 3 non-obsessions. Everyone but Lusty now has really, really painful generator repair speed slowdown. And I think that is why, as we're going to see going forward from here, right, when we get our kick and we look to start our next chase, that Nia chooses to stay injured because she very well could have rotated toward Nicolas Cage. She probably could have rotated as well toward Lusty while I was busy, right? He had a med kit. They very well could have chosen to heal, but they decided against that. And remember, right, Lusty being the obsession, his because of Dying Light, his healing speed is way faster than everyone else. So they, again, very well could have chosen to reset the Nia. And choosing to stay injured has its pros and its cons for them. Because she's injured, she doesn't get that 16% repair speed penalty, right? And that's a big deal. When you factor in Dying Light, that puts them at 16, 1, 2, 3, what is that, 25% slowdown? That is a massive amount of slowdown. It's what, 120 seconds, I believe I talked about in my video, solo repair speeds. And her choosing to stay injured to basically cut that penalty almost in half, while that does mean that in the macro level they're performing better, the downside that comes with it, as we see here, is that if she gets caught out of position, if she has to take a chase with 1 health state and she doesn't have Dead Hard, which she doesn't have anything to extend this chase here, she's just allowing me to snowball. Because the whole time now that I'm committing toward Nia, I've got Lara Croft on hook. And if Lara Croft is getting healed by Lusty, that means the person that does generators the fastest, right? That person is that person's not on generators. The person who would be TotallyBepsi, he's got Dying Light and Gift of Pain. So they would be in such a bad position in the 1v4 if he has to go for the unhook, but someone's got to go for the unhook because I'm committed to this other person. If they don't do that, if they try to sit on generators, again, not only would it be inefficient, but they're going to put me in a position where I now put Nia back on death hook, I reapply Gift of Pain, I ramp up my Dying Light, I can now go back to that other person on the hook, I can proxy that, I can deny the completion of the generator. You know what I mean? Like, they have to do something here, and they have to do something quick. Especially since, again, getting caught out of position because they were injured. Nia doesn't have a way to make this pallet. Pallet's on the other side of the tile. I use Cigar Box here in order to play more consistent at a baseline. Because here's the thing, gang. This is what Cigar Box is really great. This is why I brought Cigar Box specifically against a team like this. If I had Flask of Bleach, in the event that it was necessary, a tile like this, I could play better, objectively. It is about a 28 to 30% or something like that potency increase to the strength of the pink bottle. You go from 15 to 19%, right? Objectively, having Flask of Bleach here would be really, really good. But the decision, since it wasn't necessary to take Flask of Bleach, being able to take Cigar Box means that as long as I know what to do with my bottles, then I get this down here. There's no real... The ball is in my court to make the mistake, essentially, right? There's not really too much she can do, especially since if she camps this pallet, right? She's forced into dropping the pallet, can't really go from there. We have our yellows. We basically lock her in at the pallet. So that is basically what I'm getting at when it comes to countering Gift of Pain, right? Their decision to stay injured here is basically what bit them in the ass, manner of speaking, right? Because it was this decision to stay injured, giving me this faster chase on Ania that enabled me to hook her, and then while they're still injured shortly after the unhook, even though they choose to finish this generator, it's what enables me to rotate back and then start my next chase with her while she's still injured. Now, what I think they chose to do is they unhooked, they finished this generator right here, and then they rotated to main building. I think that's why we see Lusty at the generator. I think Lusty was looking to try to take aggro. He was looking to get my attention so I'm not focused on the other survivors, right? Especially since I have been putting Gift of Pain on everybody. Maybe he thought that I'd look to put Gift of Pain on him too. And admittedly, we are at a point in the match where if he was free enough, I would consider putting Gift of Pain on him, right? Because I have Gift of Pain on every non-obsession. I have someone else on Death Hook, right? Ultimately, I do have what feels like a decent amount of 1v4 pressure, both when it comes to slowing down their repair speeds, but also just overall hook states, health states, things of that nature. But even still, I'm not really going to bother chasing him. I'm confident in his understanding of how to play these tiles and how to chain them. Even though I have 5 bottles on me, right? I know that the unhook is about to take place potentially as well on this side of the map. So I could choose not to chase him, again, since he has the obsession. I can look to either rotate back to this hook, as I'm prepping to do, or I can first check this gen, right? It's still been relatively soon. They could have rotated here from that first generator, I figured, right? Ultimately, there's only 4 survivors. One's on the hook, which means technically 3 survivors. We saw 1 at that generator, so only 2 survivors, right? The odds of someone being at this tile are fairly high, and we see Nicolas Cage. So rather than immediately push in this direction, I want to see if I can keep him at the tile as I rotate from the other side, maybe springboard with another bottle. And in the process of doing so, I see that Lara is also at this tile, which is why you see me take a step back. I want to get everything in my field of view. I've got my pink applied. I still got 3 bottles. I'm picking up my yellow as well that I placed behind me. I want to get everybody in scope. I want to springboard off the yellow that's placed outside the building. And while she is still locked in here, while I've got my pink bottle as well down there, I want to make sure that I can keep her here and I can down her just like I similarly downed the Nia, right? Because Lara's doing the exact same thing. Again, y'all, imagine if they fully healed, how much differently this match would have been. A very big reason as to why I felt like I was able to win this entirely was because of the fact that they gave me such fast chases during the mid game. Even though you get a heavy repair speed penalty, being able to have a 2 health state chase, you can do so much more with that. Even not just in a 1v1, but in the 1v4. You can have teammates take body blocks, which means they're also potentially removing Gift of Pain, right? Things like that. There are just, I feel like, so many better ways to play this than just staying injured against a killer like Clown. Maybe a different killer that doesn't have as strong of a chase power when utilized correctly, right? But that is essentially why I was able to just straight up down her so easily. She had only 1 health state. We locked her in inside the main building. She had nowhere else to go. And this, again, puts 2 survivors, non-obsessions, very quickly back on hook. We reapply Gift of Pain. So even though she was looking to do generators faster, well, that comes at the cost of basically now being potentially taken out of the match much sooner. And also we are now at 5 stacks of Dying Light. So 2 survivors have Gift of Pain with this hook. Nicolas Cage to TotallyBepsi, he does not, because we removed it on that body block, right, when we hit him at the main building. And that is why at this point, I am looking to start a chase with him next. We catch him at Killer Shack. This is literally one of the most prime positions to be. We see Nicolas Cage here who's injured. We see Nia here who's on Death Hook. Nia has no incentive to do anything for Nicolas Cage right now. If Nia shows up to body block, I take Nia out of the match. You know, she's going to lose her first health state, and then we go for her next. We kill her. She's donezo, right? We'd then gain another stack of Dying Light. They'd be in a 1v3. He'd still be potentially injured. If we found him out of position, we win the game outright, basically, at that point, right? You get what I mean? So even though Nia is here, the fact that she is on Death Hook means she can't do anything. We have the information of knowing she's here to commit to chasing with the Nicolas Cage, right? And because of the pre-setup, because of the momentum from my yellow, again, look at where I place this yellow. This yellow isn't at the tile. It is a yellow that I used for reloading, and yet I'm able to springboard off of it. I call it springboarding because it's like a trampoline. You're using it to jump from one tile to another, using the boost from the speed to capitalize off in a way that you would similarly if it were at that same tile. He chooses to hop into a locker because in the event that I swing, right, I go for a lunge, then he stalls out the chase just a teeny bit further. In the event I go for a locker grab, it actually helps him also in denying surge. And even better, I'll go as far as to say, it means that I can't use a yellow bottle to ensure that if I wanted to, I carry him to a Scourge Hook. See, the thing is, I don't have much to work with, right? I don't have Jagged Compass. I have this hook in front of me. I could have gone for this hook, but this hook would be risky. We know for a fact 2 survivors are here. They'd very likely, due to when this unhook happened, would still have base kit endurance. So that's a minimum of 2 body blocks. And that could mean that I probably don't get the unhook off in the process, especially if maybe even a 3rd survivor is there, right? I could fall behind because of that. I could remove all of my Gift of Pain in the process because of that, because of those body blocks. So it's very, very, very risky. And I would go as far as to say not worth it to even consider attempting for this Scourge Hook. Instead of going for this hook here, which was a mistake on my part, I didn't know that he wasn't on Death Hook. I got my hook counters backwards. I could have instead, which would have been safe, gone for the Scourge Hook by that bus. If we went out, as y'all see, right, we down Nick right here. If I would have gone out the shack to the right, gone to that bus, there's a Scourge Hook there, that would have been our better option. And since I get everything mixed up in my head, we have to settle for this. Now, I will say, if this was earlier on in the match, choosing to hook Nicolas Cage here would have very likely been more game-changing and game-throwing than it was at the moment. But since we have 6 stacks of Dying Light, that's 18% regression. He may not have Gift of Pain, but he has a very painful Dying Light. So I can at least kind of settle with that. And, you know, like before, right, we catch the Lara Croft, also injured. And this is literally what I'm talking about when it comes to choosing not to heal against Gift of Pain. If they had chosen to heal, I feel like this match would have been harder simply because of the fact that they're just giving me these faster chases. Maybe they were more confident and they didn't expect me to either know what to do with my bottles or that I had Cigar Box. But it's the same thing here, right? She basically goes down because she chooses to greed, both her health state and the tile. She doesn't have anything else to work with. And honestly, y'all, if I didn't do what I'm about to do right now, I might have won this game sooner. Admittedly, this was an ego play. This was not something I should have done. And they punished me for it very deservedly. That's why I said it was very stupid. In my mind, I figured she was a guaranteed kill. She's down and out. Maybe I bait someone else for the pickup and I still get the pickup, which means I'm pulling him off in macro and I'm having my cake and eat it too. Maybe I get a tag onto Lusty because he overextends, which means I have him in a vulnerable position in the 1v3. He has to use up some of that med kit, right? That's kind of my whole logic here. This is a very, very greedy decision to slug the Lara, not get the secured kill, and do everything you're seeing in front of me, right? Because here's the reality. These survivors are not bad. They're very good at the game. They don't give you free tags. And in the process that I tried to fish for something I couldn't reach, she now decides to crawl under the pallet. And at this point, this is very, very dangerous. See, I don't know if I don't have any bottles, so I don't know if I go for this reload, this gives them time to get in position. I know that if I get this pickup here, that it's very likely unsafe from Lusty. Lusty could get the pallet stun. I can't get a pallet stun on me right now. I need to get rid of Lara Croft. She has to get taken out of the match. And, you know, I'm still fishing, I figure, right? I figure, hey, if she crawls under the pallet, maybe this means that I have to play off of that and I can still get something, right? If Lusty wants to overextend for the pallet save, then that possibly means he's out of position and I get that health state I was talking about, which is what happens. He's not able to play the shack. He's in a dead zone, can't make window. This is that health state. So I go back for this pickup here. I figure, right, yeah, she's able to crawl under the pallet. No one else, I figure, is in position. I'm in a good position in the 1v4, soon to be 1v3, but then this happens. She has Unbreakable. She drops the pallet. This is a very, very smart decision to drop the pallet here, by the way. And now I'm just cooked. I can't do anything in this position because she's able to drop this pallet. She's able to make a whole lot of distance. She actually moves back to this check spot. I don't have any momentum and I'm down on bottles. Do y'all see where it says I have 1 bottle? I'm not able to just play this. If I try to rotate normally, then she's just going to run it and play the window because I only have 1 bottle and I don't have the proper setup. If I try to reload from where I'm at the tile, she's going to chain it. They may have someone to body block, right? If I try to rotate and then reload and then position, it's just going to take way too much time at this point. We have 1 generator left. I know that these are good survivors. They're going to probably be rotating to have multiple survivors working on a generator at the same time, both to negate the dying light and the gift of pain. Right? So I basically have to just now leave the Lara Croft. I can't down her and take her out of the match. We're no longer in a 1v3 position. And now I'm starting to fucking panic because I have to get something in 1v4 pressure back. So I'm thinking to myself, if I can't chase the Lara Croft, if Lara Croft was otherwise my fastest chase, I have to go for someone else. And this is where now I'm looking at Lusty. Lusty is, I figure, out of position. He's not going to be able to rotate if he even sees me going back for him, following my chase with the Lara Croft, right? He's probably healing and thus out of position, as we see. And this is how I'm able to really come back into the game. See, hooking him in general doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of hook states, right? We're not looking to actually kill Lusty before we kill the other non-obsessions. He's not part of our win con. The purpose behind chasing him and hooking him when it comes to 1v4 macro pressure is that one of these 3 non-obsession survivors now has to come unhook him. And when they do unhook them, if they do heal him, right, he's going to have Gift of Pain, which means he will get a little bit of a slowdown. So this is basically the best I'm going to get. It's the most that I can work with as a killer like Clown with limited map mobility. And yeah, we're basically looking to carry him here. We're going to get, like I said, started when it comes to 1v4 macro pressure. And in the process, because I'm not really looking to spend too much time around this hook, if I can, I just want to start, again, another chase. And one of the things I feel like Clown excels when it comes to this build compared to other builds, again, against teams like this, is that other builds, you really are more encouraged to proxy that hook to be relative to when the unhook happens, simply because of the fact that the time you spend in chase right here, right, is it really being, when it comes to slowing down survivor efficiency, right? And also the fact that with survivors being pulled toward that hook, you're able to do more about that. And having these perks, having the freedom to seek out survivors, keep up that omnipresent threat, right? Being everywhere at once and keeping the survivors on their toes, especially since, again, as we're seeing with how they choose to stay injured against Gift of Pain. That is where we now finally start to get our foothold. See, we've got Lusty on a hook. We still catch Lara now while she's injured and out of position. And because Lara is on death hook, this is my first kill. We have now finally started to get to where we're at when it comes to creating the 1v3. And from here, we might have a chance of winning because even though there's 1 generator left, these generators are closer than they could have been. They probably could have spread it a bit further apart. And we have 3 survivors, right? Or excuse me, 2 of them. I don't think Nick doesn't have Gift of Pain, but he still has 7 stacks of Dying Light. That is 21% slowdown. Nia has 21% slowdown on top of 16%, so that's 37%. So she's also going to be very slow. With Lusty being out of chase, he's not doing generators in the process, right? So right now, especially right here at this very moment, no one is doing generators. And this kind of gives me the freedom and the liberty to basically clean up the game. Because we find TotallyBepsi. TotallyBepsi is on death hook. We kill him. We've now created a 1v2, right? Which means that we're at the tie and we're pretty much at the win. And we get our first tag. So he's out of position. One of the problems with choosing to be where he's at right now, see, this is what I talked about when I said some survivors, especially like that have comp experience, they don't really have practice against Cigar Box. And it's usually because Cigar Box, either Cigar Box and Yellows just aren't ran, right? Even when it's allowed, the Clown players just aren't experienced enough to use their yellow bottles properly to take advantage. and thus, you know, I guess he just didn't have the practice for that, right? Lusty's call of choosing to pre-run and chain the tile is what he should have also been doing. It would have created a, you know, a situation of who do I chase? Rather than you stay right there, I'm going to chase you, right? Because you're the easy choice. If Lusty chooses to run and you stay, right, you're the one who's de facto the decision. And since you're out of position, you're also similarly just as valuable of a, or excuse me, not viable, you're just as similarly of a weak target as he is when it comes to health states, since your first health state comes so free, right? Lusty may have had one health state, but he pre-ran, which is effectively just as strong as having two health states compared to someone like Bepsi, who is healthy, but gets caught in a corner. We get this tag, he has Dramaturgy, he's able to use Dramaturgy to chain the tile, and we're able to get a improvised momentum combo here that this is something, by the way, you can't stop moving on the setup. You have to just roll with the placements, right? Same thing with these bottles. I figured this pink would be a bit further up, but it wasn't. And I can't just say, oh, well, we'll just run it back again. You know, if you don't place your bottles where they 100% need to be, well, guess what, gang? You have to commit off of it anyways. You have to see what else you can do. And that's what I did. We get the pink here. I still have two bottles. I'm taking my Garish makeup kit on the yellow. I keep rotating forward. I reapply my pinks. I catch him on this pallet. Let's run that back. We get the first health state. I throw the yellow inward on the tile. I put the pink on the outside on the tile by the pallet possession. He's playing on the right side. He doesn't vault inward. This pink and the moving left and right, with how fast that I move with my Invigoration, the purpose behind doing all of this is that I figured he was going to panic vault back in, and since I hard commit in the timing when he would have hard panic vaulted back in, there's no other way that he would avoid the hit. But the thing is, Bepsi's patient, right? We see that. He doesn't vault outward. He doesn't give me this tag. He stays inward. And at that same time, rather than say, oh, well, maybe I'll try to get him to bait a vault again, he's probably not going to vault because we see he's patient. I instead push inward with my Garish makeup kit. I force him to keep rotating. He's not ready for this. And that is just the bare minimum distance that I need to get this down. This creates my 1v2, right? We kill Bepsi. And I feel like this chase is very similar to what happened with my chase with Lusty upcoming. And I do actually think I could have downed him at that pallet loop as well, right? In the same way that I downed Bepsi without needing to kick that pallet, had I played a little bit better, as we're going to see, I don't think I would have needed to here. So I kick this generator, right? We're trying to find a survivor. We don't see anybody. I figured just get some passive regression going. I thought I see someone, don't see anybody. And we're basically near the tail end of the match. This match is pretty much over. It is a 1v2. But there's still, you know, a little bit more to be said. We're just kind of rotating, right? Looking for just one last person I can chase. I see Lusty in the distance. He's still injured, especially to play around Gift of Pain. But again, right, that does make a one health state chase with two survivors already dead, even though he's the Obsession. Very much a worthy chase at this point, since that creates, you know, 3 kills. That is a win. And from here, y'all, I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of just taking the piss. I'm kind of fishing. I'm kind of trying to see, you know, what I can really just get from Lusty, because I know he's really good in chase. And if there's any opportunity for me to be greedy, right, and for me to experiment, now's the time. And again, right, like Bepsi, these are really good players. He's patient. He doesn't vault when he shouldn't. But I figured, right, especially since, here's the thing about me faking this pallet kick right when I did. In my mind, he is thinking this is the best time to kick the pallet. The absolute best time, especially with the yellow. He's probably, I figured he'd be thinking, I'm going to kick the pallet with my yellow, catch him in a dead zone. Instead, I thought that if I don't kick this pallet, I can react faster, I can pre-place the pink, and then I'd possibly be able to down him before he makes it back to the pallet. But I made a mistake. See, y'all, I'm in my 30s, and I got boomer thumbs. So this pink bottle hits the outside on the, it hits the edge of the window inside the tile, and thus it doesn't intoxicate him. And this makes me panic. So instead of committing around this edge of this hook, right, following him in this tile, he's not only not intoxicated, this window vault also accomplishes nothing, but I fuck up, y'all. I'm not able to get this hit. And the yellow gets misplaced, which, by the way, everything you're seeing right here, I think this is a very good demonstration as to why I think a lot of the people that play Clown and Comp just don't bother with the yellows, because they're not practiced, gang. And I'm practiced and I sometimes make mistakes. So, you know, the idea of someone who doesn't know what they're doing trying to play around with something they don't have practice with and then throwing the game because of that, right? You know, this would have been a lot worse had we not been where we're at in the match. Am I right? Like, you can't normally afford to just to be greedy with such risk and so such little reward, right? It would have obviously been better just to kick the pallet, but we have 2 survivors dead. I wanted to see what I could do. But, you know, again, right? Like, even though we do struggle to get this hit, and I do decide to eventually kick the pallet, and that is when we eventually, I think we do break chase with him up here, right? He does force me to break the pallet. He's a really good player. I thought maybe we get the pink on the outside, and then we beat him as a result of that to the pallet. We don't. And even though I've got 8 stacks of Dying Light and Gift of Pain on the Nia, y'all, I start to respect him. I'm like, okay, dude, he's probably they're gonna finish the last generator if I don't break chase from Lusty. I gotta go look for that non-obsession. So I do reload my bottles. I do go to one of the last 2 generators that they'd be working on. This is where I find the Nia out of position. And, you know, that's all she wrote, right? Nia's on death hook. I'll look at this chase and I'll go back to Lusty's first. So yeah, I knew, by the way, that she's not greeting this pallet. She'd be out of her fucking mind to greet this pallet. She's too good at the game to greet this pallet. That is part of what you should anticipate, by the way, with certain survivors of certain skill levels. You have to know when you call their bullshit. So I know that even though she doesn't drop it right now, I don't need Cigar Box to know that she's not going to come back and drop this pallet. That's why I have this pink out, because she's going to come back to drop it. The pink, I figured, would go slightly over the rock and then hit her here. This would do one of 2 things. Either she greeds, and I can potentially anticipate that, and then I catch her in the rotation around this pre-drop pallet because of the animation lock in the pink. Or B, because I still have my yellow, this pink could encourage her to vault because of that, and the pre-placement as she threw down the pallet. And if I anticipate that vault on the 50-50, I can lunge around this rock and hit her while she's still on the vault. But as we see, right, she doesn't anticipate me moving as quickly around the pallet. I know that she's not going to vault. She now has to rotate because I'm body blocking the pallet. She can't vault to begin with. And this is where we get our tag in a dead zone. She doesn't really have much at all to work with. She's got this one pallet to the right. She tries to see if she can make the jungle gym. She sees she's not going to make the jungle gym. She probably thought I'd have a pink out. And I'll be honest, gang, I figured she'd be running to this pallet, so I did not have my pink out. I was preparing myself a step ahead in the event she's going to, you know, play the pallet. So I have to throw a yellow for this. I don't need to use the yellow. She runs inward instead of outward. The idea behind this yellow, by the way, was in the event that instead of her running into me, right, she could have gone on the outside of the loop, take possession of the pallet, right, instead of running at me, run around the loop. She'd take possession. My yellow would be in place. I could push in enough on the possession to force her to drop it and get that animation lock. The placement and the the timing of that would enable me to rotate the pallet if she chose to rotate. It would put me in a position to catch her on the 50-50 if she chose to vault. But ultimately, I would have the advantage here, right? And, you know, what I didn't exactly expect was for her to just run right into me, right? But again, she didn't really have much she can do. And it's with this that the game is pretty much over. So I do what I do when, again, let's kind of summarize what really happened here before I go back again to that chase. Is that this, I think, really showcased not only how you can't make mistakes against a team like this, they will pretty much play off of the most efficiency that they have and what's available to them, but just also the punishment that comes with, even for skilled survivors like this, right? Staying injured with Gift of Pain and Dying Light. You know, it very well would have been a smart call in a macro sense if they could have lasted longer in chase. But when you only have 1 health state to work with, you make mistakes in chase, which, you know, these survivors are human as good as they are, right? And I'm human too, and, you know, I can capitalize off of that with my own experience, right? You know, then that it's just a matter of math. 1 health state versus 2 means that a killer like Clown does better in the 1v4. And that's, you know, what I find very interesting about how this build stood up against this team. So lastly, before we ended it, you know, we did end up getting 1 final chase with Lusty. I guess we can go ahead and just kind of show that, right? And it's like reloading. I didn't realize he was on this generator. So we're just looking to kind of have our final little last chase. I thought this pink would have applied. I'm very surprised that the velocity wasn't there for it. Also probably ping. And yeah, you know, we kicked the Pallet over at the jungle gym already. He's just got nothing to work with at this point. We're so late into the game. But y'all, his chases were, you know, fantastic. Like, Lusty is genuinely one of the best survivors I've gone against in my matches publicly. You know, I don't do comp DBD. I don't, not only the time that I would have for it, y'all, is not interested in that. So, you know, very much props to him and how he played. Again, let's look one more time at that chase, though, at that jungle gym. Right? When I'm looking to get him right over here. So I do believe that I could have downed Lusty the way that I was playing this. The mistake that I made, right? I do look to reload here, and this wasn't where I could have gotten the hit. Right over here, when I've got him locked at this pallet and I'm getting my bottles back, not only could have I put the yellow right here, I think everything about this was fine, especially the setup, right? All of this was good. The yellow would expire before he would rotate and make it back to the pallet. The mistake was that because of my age, y'all, you know, the pink hit the edge. If this pink goes over, and instead of vaulting the window, right, if this pink, after this setup here, would have went over the window, and without stopping, I either take this left side of the tile since he's slowed down, or I take the right side of the tile because he's slowed down and I throw a pink on the opposite side of the, you know, outside wall, kind of like I did with Bepsi. You know, we go back to my chase with Bepsi here, right? See how I played it here? Where I put the pink here, followed my yellow, and we just hard rotated. If I just played like this, right? Just didn't stop and kept my movement and then put the pinks on the opposite, on the outside wall, he wouldn't have been able to make it to the window. He wouldn't have been able to make it to the pallet. Right? But it does matter, you know, when you do misplace your pinks. It's not all about the yellows, and it's not all about one bottle, essentially. Everything has to be done perfectly. I run out of bottles here, I reload, right? But because I just miss it at the window, that is why I just don't get the setup. And y'all, admittedly, too, I do think that I got a little bit nervous because I missed the pink. Maybe because of the pink right here. Had I just rotated, he also probably would have gone down, right? But momentum is key. It's all about momentum. It's all about practice. You can't stop. You have to work with the bottles that you throw, you know? Again, if bottles don't land perfectly where you want them, you have to make it work anyways. Really, really good match. These survivors played very, very well. Let me real quick transition back here. And with that, I do feel like that's just about all that can be said. You know, again, y'all, shout out to these survivors, both Lusty and friends. They were all very, very good players in Chase. You know, people like this are how I learn and I get better, right? And it's nice being able to, as well, kind of exhibition the build against a team like this. You know, again, they could have had stronger builds, but you're not really allowed to do that in an organized setting, and I think that's why they had the perks that they did. They weren't here to, like I said, sweat and prove a point. They were just here to play the game well, practice their fundamentals, I believe. So, you know, GG's, really good stuff there. If you're interested in learning Clown, I have a very detailed Clown guide. There'll be sure to link in the description. We're hoping that enough of the changes don't go through so that it remains accurate. I also stream live on Twitch during the weekdays, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. It kind of depends. Don't really have any set in course schedule yet. So I've linked my stream in the description as well. And lastly, if y'all really like these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe, not just for yourself so you know when I post new videos, but also because it really helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm, pushes my videos to more people, which means that more people are able to see and learn from what I have to say, which, you know, is what I really like a lot about being a YouTube content creator. So on that, I hope y'all really enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all next time. Later, gang.